Imagine for a moment that you stand in front of a mirror. It's not the mirror that reveals the truth, but what you see reflected back. The silent thoughts, the raw impulses, the urges that rise from deep within. What happens when you look closely, when you refuse to look away from the darkness within your own soul? What would you think if I told you that to become truly untouchable as a man, you must first come to terms with your own darkness? The modern world tells you to suppress it. Keep the beast hidden, cover up the cracks in your armor, deny the shadows that seek to pull you under. Men are taught to wear their strength like a shield, to present an image of polished perfection. But there is a truth that few are willing to face. Your strength comes not from what you hide, but from what you embrace. This is where the stoic wisdom of Marcus Aurelius strikes. He did not shy away from the inner turmoil of the soul. He understood that to master oneself, one must first understand one's darker impulses. He knew that these desires, these so-called weaknesses, were not enemies to be fought, but facets of the very strength he sought to embody. The man who understands his darkness is the man who controls it, rather than the one who is controlled by it. The notion of dark desires conjures images of violence, lust, greed, or revenge, things that civilized society frowns upon. But in truth, these desires are as old as humanity itself. We are creatures driven by urges that we cannot always explain, and yet there is power in confronting these desires, not the power of indulgence, but the power of mastery. Imagine now that you stand at the precipice of your own psyche. At this very moment, you feel the pull of all your suppressed desires, those hidden aspects of yourself that you've avoided facing for so long. To look at them directly, to acknowledge them fully, would require bravery. And that is where the true power of man lies, not in the ability to destroy these impulses, but in the ability to accept them as part of the whole. When a man embraces his darkest desires, he no longer fears them. He does not let them control him. Instead, he transcends them. This process of understanding oneself is the first step towards emotional self-mastery. It is the ability to look within, to dissect the motives, and to bring order to the chaos within. Through this understanding, a man gains the kind of control that is impenetrable, no longer swayed by fleeting emotions or knee-jerk reactions. He stands as an unshakable force in the world. The Stoic mind does not shy away from discomfort. In fact, it seeks it. The true test of a man's character is not how he handles external pressures, but how he handles the pressures within. How does he respond when his ego is threatened, when his desires clash with his reason? These are the moments when a man's true emotional resilience is forged. By embracing the darkness within, he can more fully embrace the light of his higher self. And what is the outcome of this process? The man who understands his darkest desires becomes untouchable. He cannot be manipulated by others because he is no longer controlled by his own inner chaos. He has learned to sit in the storm, unbothered by the winds and the waves, knowing that his power lies in his ability to remain still. But how does one begin this journey of self-understanding? It starts with silence. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of introspection. It requires a willingness to sit with your discomfort, to face the parts of yourself that are inconvenient or shameful. Silence is where the truth lies, not in the loud demands of the world, but in the quiet moments when you can hear your own thoughts without distraction. The answer is everything. When you are silent, you give yourself the space to hear your own inner voice. You stop reacting to the world's noise and begin listening to your own impulses without judgment. This is where you will find your power, not in the suppression of your desires, but in your ability to recognize and control them. This process of self-awareness requires vulnerability, but it is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength, and here lies the paradox. By facing your fears and desires, you become stronger than any man who hides from them. The man who understands his darkest desires does not fear the chaos within him. He becomes the master of that chaos. In the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius, there is no room for denial. What stands in the way becomes the way, he wrote. This means that instead of avoiding the discomfort of confronting your own darkness, you should lean into it. It is only by embracing the things that disturb us most that we are able to transcend them. The deeper you delve into your shadow, the closer you come to the light of true self-mastery. You see, the path to emotional resilience does not lie in removing the dark parts of yourself. It lies in accepting them, understanding their origin, and learning to live with them without letting them control you. This is the essence of Stoicism, the ability to face the world as it is and to master yourself in the process. By understanding your desires, you begin to transcend them. The man who understands his darkest desires is the one who has seen the depths of his soul and chosen to rise above them. He is not defined by his impulses, but by his ability to control them. And in that control, he finds the ultimate freedom. What if I told you that the greatest power a man can possess is the power to be unshakable? To not be moved by the waves of his emotions or the tempests of life? Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a storm, and while everything around you is raging, winds howling, thunder crashing, lightning splitting the sky, you stand perfectly still. You are calm. You are centered. You are in control. This image of calm in chaos, of emotional resilience in the face of life's most intense pressures, is not a fantasy. It is a reality that every man can achieve, but only through one thing: understanding himself. More specifically, understanding the desires that pull him in all directions, the ones he is too afraid to confront, the ones he wishes would simply go away. The strength to remain unshaken in such a storm comes not from fighting against the world or repressing the parts of oneself that are uncomfortable. It comes from the radical acceptance of everything within, the chaotic, the destructive, the passionate, the dark. These are all parts of a man's inner world that he must come to terms with. The Stoic man knows this, and Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations often spoke of the importance of understanding the impermanence of life, the fleeting nature of desire, and the inevitability of struggle. But what does this have to do with mastering your desires? Everything. When you refuse to confront your darkest desires, they control you from the shadows. They lurk beneath the surface, fueling your reactions, dictating your impulses, causing you to act in ways that you might later regret. Every desire that you refuse to acknowledge, every part of yourself you choose to deny, becomes a shadow that moves in the background of your psyche. This shadow is not passive. It exerts its force over you, and it will shape the way you show up in the world. What does this mean for the man who seeks emotional resilience? It means that emotional fortitude is not achieved by running away from your desires, but by embracing them, by recognizing the force they hold over you, and instead of being consumed by them, using their energy to fuel your growth. To understand your desires is to disarm them, and this is not an easy task. It requires immense strength to sit with the discomfort of your darkest urges. But it is through this discomfort that true resilience is born. Think of the moment when your ego is threatened, when your desires are pulled to the forefront, and you find yourself on the edge of reacting, of giving in. It is in this moment that your true power lies, not in the urge to indulge, but in your ability to choose. The man who understands his darkest desires is the one who can choose to remain still when the world demands action. He is the one who can choose silence when others would raise their voices in anger. He is the one who can choose peace when the world is in chaos. This is not about suppressing your desires, it's about integrating them. It's about understanding where they come from, why they exist, and how they shape your actions. When you do this, your desires no longer have the power to pull you around like a puppet on strings. Instead, you stand tall, rooted in your understanding, unwavering in your sense of self. Imagine being that man. The man who is so deeply connected to his inner truth that nothing can knock him off his course. His desires don't define him, his fears don't control him, and his emotions don't dictate his decisions. Instead, he walks through life with clarity, with intention, with strength. This clarity doesn't come from denying yourself, from pretending that you don't have desires or impulses. It comes from understanding them and using that knowledge to choose how you respond. The Stoic man is not the one who denies his humanity. He is the one who embraces it fully, acknowledging both his strength and his vulnerability, both his light and his darkness. In this acceptance, he finds freedom. Now think about how this kind of understanding affects your relationships with others, particularly with women. How does a woman react to a man who is in control of himself, who does not allow his desires to rule him? She is drawn to him. She feels a magnetic pull because she senses something in him that she rarely finds in others. Emotional mastery, emotional resilience, self-control. This is what makes a man attractive, not his ability to suppress his emotions, but his ability to master them. And what is more magnetic than a man who is comfortable in his own skin, who is not moved by external forces, but who stands firm like a pillar of strength in a world full of turbulence? In the eyes of the Stoic, desire is not something to be feared or avoided. It is something to be understood. By understanding your desires, you take away their power over you. You no longer react out of instinct, you act out of intention. What would your life look like if you could approach every situation with this kind of emotional mastery? If you could look at the desires that rise within you and choose not to act on impulse, but to respond with wisdom? Imagine the power that lies in such control, the strength that comes from knowing your own heart, your own mind, and your own impulses. This is the true power of a man who understands his darkest desires. Have you ever wondered why it is that the most powerful men in history are often the ones who seem to say the least? Imagine a world where men are defined not by the loudness of their voices, but by the depth of their silence. This silence is not born from fear or a lack of emotion. It is forged in the furnace of self-understanding. A man who knows his darkest desires does not need to prove his worth to anyone. His mere presence speaks volumes. The silence of such a man is not empty. It is full of purpose, full of power. It is the silence of a man who has seen the depths of his own soul, who has confronted the shadows within and emerged stronger. This is the silence of a man who understands that the most profound strength lies not in the need for external validation, but in the ability to remain unaffected by the world around him. And in this silence, there is an irresistible allure. Why do we fear silence? What is it about the stillness of a man that makes others uncomfortable? The answer lies in the mystery. In the absence of words, in the refusal to conform to the expectations of others, the Stoic man becomes an enigma. He does not share every thought, every feeling, every impulse. He keeps much of himself hidden, and it is this mystery that draws people in. They wonder, they question, they desire to know more. But here is the secret. The man who understands his darkest desires does not need to reveal them to the world. He knows that his power lies not in the sharing of his vulnerabilities, but in the way he carries them with him, in the way he integrates them into his being without allowing them to control him. He owns them. He uses them to become a more complete version of himself, not someone defined by shame, but by mastery. Consider the man who has faced his desires, his lust, his anger, his ambition, and instead of letting them consume him, he has learned to channel them. He has learned to sit with them, understand their origin, and then move forward with them as part of his strength, not his weakness. This is what makes him untouchable. He does not deny his nature, he embraces it, and in embracing it, he rises above it. This is where emotional mastery begins. It begins in the quiet, introspective spaces where a man is forced to confront his own internal battles. It's not the moment of action that reveals a man's true strength. It's the moment when he chooses not to act, when he resists the impulse to indulge, when he holds steady and makes the conscious decision to rise above. This is emotional resilience, the ability to sit with the chaos of life, to feel the full force of your desires and yet not be swayed by them. The world has taught men to avoid their shadows, to cover up the things that make them uncomfortable. But the true Stoic man understands that to deny his shadow is to deny a part of himself. Instead, He brings those shadows into the light, not as weaknesses to be eradicated, but as integral parts of his identity that must be understood and mastered. Imagine the moment when you are tempted to act out of anger or desire or fear. In this moment, the man who has understood his darkest desires stands still. He feels the pull of his emotions, but he does not act on them. He understands that this impulse is not who he truly is. It is a fleeting moment, a passing storm, and just as quickly as it comes, it will pass. But the man who has not understood his desires, who has never sat with them, will be controlled by them. His actions will be dictated by his emotions, and his relationships will suffer as a result. He will chase validation, seek approval, and give in to his impulses without thought. The world will see this, and they will see a man who is weak because he is constantly at the mercy of his desires. This is why emotional mastery is so powerful. It is not about denying your desires, it is about understanding them deeply enough to know that they do not define you. You are not your impulses. You are the one who chooses how to respond to them. And in this choice lies your power. Let's bring this back to relationships, specifically to your relationship with women. When you understand your darkest desires, you no longer need to chase after attention. You no longer need to seek out validation through external means. Women are drawn to the man who is not desperate for their approval, who does not bend to their whims or chase after their affection. They are drawn to the man who is at peace with himself, who has nothing to prove, and who does not need their approval to feel whole. This is the paradox of masculine attraction. The more you are in control of your desires, the less you need to prove yourself. The man who can remain still in the face of temptation, who can choose not to act out of desire, is the one who commands attention without saying a word. His power lies in his ability to be unaffected by the world's demands, to walk his path with calm confidence, and to choose his actions based on wisdom, not impulse. This is the essence of stoic power. It is the understanding that your desires do not define you and that true strength lies not in satisfying them, but in mastering them. The stoic man does not chase after what he wants. He has already found it within himself. And so when you understand your darkest desires, you not only take control of your emotional landscape, you unlock a level of power that is untouchable. No one can manipulate you, no one can sway you, because you have already come to terms with the most powerful force within you, yourself. Do you ever wonder why some men exude an air of quiet authority, while others seem desperate to shout their worth to the world? The difference between these two types of men lies not in their outward appearance, but in their internal mastery. It lies in the way they respond to their desires, the way they embrace their inner darkness without letting it consume them. What if I told you that true masculine power is not about fighting the darker parts of yourself, but about understanding and controlling them? To become a true master of your emotions, you must first understand what drives you, what fuels the desires that you might consider weaknesses. Only then can you transform them into the raw material for your personal growth. Think about it for a moment. Every man has a dark side. These are the desires and emotions we keep hidden from the world. Lust, greed, envy, anger, fear. Society tells us to repress these desires, to pretend they don't exist. But the stoic man knows that to repress them is to give them more power. Denial only strengthens the shadow. The more you resist the darkness within, the more it controls you. But when you accept it, when you acknowledge it without judgment, it loses its hold over you. This is the key to emotional mastery. It is not about denying your desires or emotions. It is about understanding them, integrating them, and choosing how to respond. The stoic man does not give in to the impulse of desire. He acknowledges it, sits with it, and then makes a conscious decision about how to move forward. In this way, he remains in control of his emotional landscape rather than being swept away by the tides of unchecked desire. Let's take a closer look at how this understanding transforms a man's power in his relationships. Imagine you are in a situation where a woman's attention is on the line. Most men, driven by their desires, will chase after her approval, desperately seeking to win her affection. They will bend themselves to her will, give her everything she wants, all in the hope that she will validate them. But the man who understands his darkest desires is different. He knows that his worth does not depend on her approval. He does not need her to validate his existence, and in this awareness, he becomes irresistible. Why? Because women are drawn to men who are not desperate for their attention. They are drawn to men who have an inner strength, a quiet confidence that is unshaken by the world's demands. This man does not need to chase after her. He stands tall, unaffected, because he already knows his worth. This is the power of detachment. The Stoic man's emotional resilience allows him to detach from the need for approval. His worth comes from within, not from external validation. When a man can stand in his own strength, unaffected by the whims of the world, he becomes a force that others cannot ignore. He commands respect without saying a word. His silence speaks volumes because it reveals a man who is at peace with himself. And it is this peace that others are drawn to. The more you understand your own desires and impulses, the more you can detach from them. This detachment is not about indifference or coldness. It is about the ability to choose how to respond to the world rather than reacting instinctively. It is about owning your emotional landscape rather than letting it own you. Think about the last time you were faced with a difficult emotional situation. Perhaps you were tempted to react out of anger, frustration, or jealousy. How did you respond? Did you give in to the impulse? Or did you take a step back, detach from the emotional charge, and respond with wisdom? The man who has understood his darkest desires is the one who can remain calm in the face of such emotional storms. He knows that his emotions do not define him, and that he has the power to choose how to respond. He is not afraid of his emotions, but he does not allow them to dictate his actions. This is emotional resilience. The key to emotional mastery is understanding that your emotions, like your desires, are fleeting. They come and go like waves on the ocean. When you understand this, you stop identifying with them. You stop letting them control your behavior. Instead of reacting impulsively, you choose how to respond. And in that choice lies your power. Let's consider a scenario where this understanding is put to the test. Imagine you are in a heated argument with someone. Perhaps it's a partner, a friend, or a colleague. In this moment, your emotions are running high. You feel the heat of anger, the rush of frustration. He takes a breath. He understands that his emotions do not define him. He understands that reacting impulsively will not serve him. Instead, he chooses his response. He responds with calm, with clarity, and with wisdom. Most people, in this moment, will let their emotions take over. They will lash out, say things they don't mean, and act in ways they later regret. But the Stoic man, the one who understands his desires and his emotions, does not fall into this trap. He feels the anger rising, but he does not act on it. He pauses. This ability to choose your response is the essence of emotional mastery. It is the ability to remain calm in the face of chaos, to stand firm when the world demands you to bend. And it is in this mastery that true power lies. The Stoic man does not need to react to the world. He does not need to prove himself through his actions. He simply chooses the path that aligns with his values, and in doing so, he remains untouchable. When you understand your darkest desires, you cease to be controlled by them. They no longer dictate your actions because you have mastered them. You have the power to choose how to respond, and in this choice, you find your true strength. Do you know what makes a man truly unstoppable? It's not the battles he wins, nor the obstacles he overcomes in the physical world. No, the true power of a man lies in the battles he fights within himself, the battles against his own desires, his ego, and his darkest impulses. This is where the foundation of emotional resilience is built, and it is only when a man has conquered these inner conflicts that he can truly command the world around him. Most men think strength comes from dominating others, from asserting control over the outside world. They believe that to be powerful, they must make their presence known, shout louder than anyone else, and force the world to recognize their worth. But this approach is flawed. Real strength is not about imposing yourself on others. It is about mastering yourself, about understanding the forces within you that drive your behavior and choosing to rise above them. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most. He knew that true mastery was not about controlling the world, but about controlling the self. He wrote extensively on the nature of self-control, of emotional fortitude, and of the power that comes from embracing one's desires without being enslaved by them. He recognized that the man who can control his desires is the one who is truly free. This freedom is what makes the stoic man unstoppable. The man who has confronted his darkest desires, understood their origin, and learned to control them is not subject to the whims of external circumstances. He is not ruled by his impulses or the approval of others. He is free to act with clarity, to make decisions that align with his values, and to move through the world with unwavering purpose. Now let's think about what this looks like in real-life situations. Imagine a man who has mastered his desires, who has confronted his ego and the impulses that drive him. When faced with temptation, whether it's an alluring woman, a professional opportunity, or a fleeting moment of anger, he does not react. He does not jump at the chance to satisfy his impulses. Instead, he stands firm. He evaluates the situation. He chooses his response, not based on what feels good in the moment, but based on what will serve his higher purpose. This is not a man who is cold or emotionless. On the contrary, he feels deeply, but he has learned to control those feelings, to not let them dictate his actions. He has learned to pause before he acts, to reflect on his desires, and choose the most powerful path. In doing so, he becomes untouchable. He cannot be swayed by the fleeting temptations that others succumb to. He stands as a beacon of emotional resilience, of true strength. So what happens when a man understands his darkest desires? He becomes a force of nature. He transcends the external world because he has already conquered the internal one. His power lies in his ability to remain calm, in his ability to stay rooted in his values, even when the world around him is chaos. He has mastered the art of emotional resilience, and in doing so, he has unlocked the highest form of masculine strength. Think about how this affects his relationships. Women, for example, are drawn to men who have mastered their emotions, not because they are indifferent, but because they are stable, they are reliable. They are in control of themselves. This is the kind of man who doesn't need to chase after attention. He doesn't need to beg for affection. His worth is evident in the way he carries himself. He is a man who understands his desires but chooses not to be enslaved by them. And this power is irresistible. This is what makes emotional mastery so alluring. When a man can sit in the storm of his desires and not be swept away, others are magnetically drawn to him. There is something deeply attractive about a man who is not controlled by his impulses, who does not react out of ego, and who can choose his response in any situation. This man is a force of nature, not because he demands attention, but because he doesn't need it. His confidence, his inner peace, and his emotional fortitude speak volumes. In a world where many are ruled by their emotions, the man who understands his darkest desires stands out. He is not moved by the world's noise. He is not swayed by external influences. He has found something deeper, something more powerful within himself. This is what gives him true strength. Now let's go deeper. Imagine the effect that this kind of emotional resilience has on a man's decision-making. When you are in control of your desires, when you can look at them without being controlled by them, you make better choices. You don't act out of fear or insecurity. You don't jump at every opportunity that presents itself. Instead, you take your time. You evaluate the situation with clarity, and you make decisions that align with your values and long-term goals. This is the mark of a true leader. Leaders are not those who react impulsively, who give in to their desires and emotions. True leaders are those who can see beyond the immediate moment, who have the emotional resilience to withstand the pressures of the world, and who can make decisions based on wisdom rather than fleeting emotions. And this is exactly what happens when a man understands his darkest desires. He becomes the kind of leader who can command not only his own life, but the lives of those around him. Emotional resilience is the foundation of all other forms of strength. Without it, physical strength means little. Without it, mental strength is fragile. The man who masters his emotions has mastered himself, and in this mastery, he becomes unstoppable. Have you ever wondered what it takes to truly control a room with nothing more than your presence? To walk into a space and command the attention of everyone there, not by force, but by the quiet strength you radiate? The power that this kind of presence holds is unlike anything the world typically recognizes. It's a power forged in silence, in emotional control, and in understanding the deepest corners of your own soul. When a man truly understands his darkest desires, he no longer needs to demand attention. He doesn't need to shout his worth from the rooftops. His presence alone speaks volumes because it is rooted in an unshakable self-awareness. He has faced his own demons, understood his impulses, and mastered the deepest parts of himself. And in that mastery, he becomes untouchable. This silent, unspoken power is what makes the Stoic man so compelling. Think about it. When a man has come to terms with his darkness, he becomes a force that others cannot ignore. There is something magnetic about someone who is so deeply grounded in their own being that the world's distractions don't affect them. He is the calm in the storm, the man who stands unwavering despite the chaos of life around him. He is the man who is at peace with his shadow, and in that peace he becomes a force of nature. But how does a man achieve this? How does he reach the level of emotional mastery that allows him to walk through the world untouched by the forces that would normally pull him under? It all begins with confronting the darker aspects of himself, the desires, the fears, the impulses that most men run from. The Stoic man does not shy away from these aspects. He acknowledges them, understands them, and ultimately integrates them into his identity. This integration is the key to his power. Instead of fighting against his desires or trying to repress them, he understands that they are a part of him. They are not weaknesses, but sources of power that, when controlled, can elevate him to a higher level of emotional resilience and self-mastery. Imagine for a moment that you could no longer be controlled by your desires. What would that look like? No more chasing after fleeting pleasures, no more reacting impulsively out of frustration or lust. Instead, you are able to sit with your desires, feel them, acknowledge them, and then choose your actions based on wisdom and self-awareness rather than impulse. This is emotional mastery at its finest. The man who understands his darkest desires is not afraid of them. He knows that his desires are merely a reflection of his humanity, and that by mastering them, he is able to transcend them. This transcendence is what gives him the ability to make decisions that are aligned with his values, not his impulses. And what happens when a man reaches this level of emotional mastery? He becomes untouchable. His decisions are no longer swayed by his emotions or by the opinions of others. He acts with clarity, with purpose, and with intention. He does not react to the world. He creates the world he wants to see. This is the power that comes from understanding your darkest desires. It's not the power to indulge them, but the power to rise above them. The man who can do this is the man who can shape his own reality. He is the man who becomes the architect of his own life. But here's the thing, this level of mastery requires constant practice. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that is cultivated over time through conscious effort and deliberate action. It requires a deep commitment to self-awareness and emotional control. It requires the willingness to sit with discomfort, to face your darkest desires, and to choose to rise above them. When you make this commitment to yourself, you begin to change. You begin to see the world differently. You begin to understand that your desires are not your enemies, but simply part of the human experience. You learn to navigate them with wisdom and to use them as fuel for your personal growth. The man who understands his darkest desires is not ruled by them. He has mastered them. And in this mastery, he becomes the kind of man who commands respect without having to ask for it. His silence is powerful because it speaks to a deeper understanding of the self. His emotional resilience is unshakable because he has faced the depths of his own soul and emerged stronger. This is the essence of Stoic masculinity. It is the ability to walk through the world unaffected by the forces that would normally cause a man to break. It is the ability to understand your desires, your ego, and your emotions, and to rise above them. It is the ability to remain calm in the storm, to make decisions based on wisdom and clarity, and to shape your own destiny. In the eyes of the world, this kind of power is rare. But to the Stoic man, it is simply the natural outcome of emotional mastery. It is the fruit of a lifetime spent understanding oneself, of embracing one's darkest desires, and of choosing to rise above them. What if I told you that the ultimate test of a man's strength does not come in moments of triumph, but in moments of surrender? True power is not shown in how hard a man fights, but in how deeply he understands the forces within him and how he chooses to relinquish control when it serves his greater purpose. This is where the Stoic man stands apart. He does not fight against his desires, his emotions, or the world. He masters them by surrendering to the greater flow of life, by accepting what is, and by choosing not to be bound by the chaos of the world around him. Most men operate under the illusion that power is about control, about holding on to everything, forcing life to bend to their will. They resist, they fight, they push against the current. But the Stoic man understands that true power lies not in resistance, but in the ability to flow with the current of life, to surrender to the world's inevitable chaos while remaining deeply rooted in his own truth. This doesn't mean that the Stoic man lacks desire or ambition. On the contrary, he understands his desires profoundly, but he is not controlled by them. He does not seek to satisfy every urge or impulse, but instead to master them. He knows that desire is a natural part of the human condition, but that the most powerful man is the one who can choose not to be enslaved by it. He can look at his darkest desires, his lust, his anger, his greed, and see them not as weaknesses but as energies that can be harnessed for his greater good. This is where emotional resilience truly comes into play. The Stoic man does not try to escape or deny his emotions. He does not seek to suppress the darkness within him, nor does he indulge in it. He simply understands it, accepts it, and chooses to rise above it. He understands that the man who is ruled by his desires is the one who is truly enslaved. The man who masters his desires, who remains unaffected by them, is the one who is truly free. When you reach this level of emotional mastery, you no longer need to struggle against yourself. You no longer need to resist the natural ebb and flow of your emotions, desires, and impulses. You can look at them, acknowledge them, and then choose to act in a way that is aligned with your highest self. In this surrender, there is power, and it is in this power that the Stoic man becomes untouchable. But here's the paradox. When you stop struggling, when you stop resisting the world, you find that you can control it in ways that you never imagined. It is only when you stop forcing things to happen that they begin to fall into place. This is the nature of true power. It's not about pushing against the world, it's about aligning yourself with it, flowing with it, and using your understanding of yourself to guide your path. Think about this for a moment. When was the last time you tried to force something to happen? Maybe it was a relationship, a career goal, or an attempt to change something about yourself that you didn't like. The more you pushed, the more resistance you met. This is the nature of life. It resists force, but it flows with ease when you surrender to it. The Stoic man understands this principle. He does not struggle against his desires, but instead chooses to rise above them. When he feels the pull of lust or anger, he does not act impulsively. He simply acknowledges it, understands its root, and chooses to remain unaffected. In this silence, in this emotional resilience, he becomes a force that cannot be broken. Now let's turn this idea inward. Imagine you are faced with a difficult choice, one that challenges your desires, your ego, or your sense of identity. The world is telling you to act, to chase after something that you want, but deep down, you know it may not be aligned with your true purpose. The Stoic man in this situation does not react out of desire or fear. He pauses. He sits with his emotions, his impulses, and his ego, and then makes a choice from a place of clarity. This is the art of emotional detachment. It's the ability to detach from the pull of external forces, from the temptation of desire, and to choose the path that aligns with your true self. It's the ability to say no to the things that don't serve you, even when they seem attractive or enticing. It's the power to stand firm in your truth, regardless of the chaos that surrounds you. But detachment is not about coldness or indifference. It is about freedom. The man who masters his desires is not ruled by them. He is not controlled by his need for validation or approval. He stands in his own truth, free from the need to prove himself to anyone. And this freedom is what makes him truly powerful. When you understand your darkest desires, you stop fighting against them. You stop trying to suppress them or deny them. You simply look at them, understand their origins, and choose to act in alignment with your highest self. This is where true power lies, when you are no longer at the mercy of your emotions, your desires, or the world. You are the one who chooses how to respond, and in this response you find your true strength. This emotional freedom, this ability to detach from the world's distractions and choose your own path, is what makes a man unstoppable. It's what allows him to walk through life with purpose, with clarity, and with an unshakable sense of self. And it is only by mastering your darkest desires, by surrendering to your truth and choosing your actions consciously, that you can achieve this level of freedom. Do you know what separates the greatest men in history from the ordinary ones? It's not their strength, their wealth, or their intelligence. It's their ability to transcend. The greatest men are those who have mastered the internal world, those who have embraced their desires, their ego, their darkness, and transformed them into sources of power. These men do not allow the world to define them. They do not react to life's pressures, but instead they shape their reality from within. And it is this internal mastery that makes them truly untouchable. Think about the last time you allowed yourself to be controlled by your desires. Maybe you acted out of anger, fear, or lust. In that moment, you gave up your power. You reacted instinctively, driven by emotions rather than wisdom. But what if, in that moment, you had chosen to remain still? What if you had paused, reflected, and then made a decision from a place of understanding and emotional control? What if you had transcended the desire and chosen the path that aligned with your highest purpose? This is the power of self-mastery, the ability to transcend your darkest desires, to rise above the impulses that would normally control you, and to make decisions based on wisdom and clarity rather than emotional reaction. The Stoic man understands that he is not defined by his desires. He is defined by his ability to choose how to respond to them. And in this choice, he becomes a master of his own life. The man who understands his darkest desires becomes untouchable because he is not swayed by the external forces that pull others around. His power lies in his ability to remain unaffected, to remain centered in his truth, even when everything around him is chaotic. This is the essence of Stoicism. It is the ability to control the one thing that you truly have control over, yourself. And it is this control that gives a man the power to navigate the world with confidence, to move through life with purpose, and to shape his own destiny. But here's the secret. This power is not something that can be gained overnight. It is something that is cultivated over time through consistent practice and conscious effort. It requires a commitment to self-awareness, to understanding the depths of your own psyche, and to choosing the path that aligns with your highest self. It is a lifelong journey of emotional resilience, of transcending the desires that would otherwise control you, and of choosing to rise above them. This is the journey that Marcus Aurelius embarked upon. He did not shy away from his own darkness. He faced it, understood it, and ultimately transcended it. He used his understanding of his own desires to become one of the greatest leaders in history. He did not seek power for the sake of power. He understood that true power comes from within, from the ability to control oneself, to make decisions based on wisdom and not on impulse. Imagine living your life with this level of mastery. Imagine being in complete control of your desires, your emotions, and your reactions. Imagine walking through the world unaffected by external pressures, not swayed by the opinions of others, and not controlled by the fleeting impulses that guide most men's actions. This is the power that comes from mastering your darkest desires. This is the power that makes you untouchable. When you embrace your true self, when you understand the forces that drive you and choose to rise above them, you become a man who is in control of his own life. You are no longer at the mercy of the world around you. You create your own reality based on your own values and principles, and it is this self-mastery, this ability to remain calm in the face of temptation, this emotional resilience that gives you true power. The man who has mastered his desires, who understands the darkness within him, is the man who holds the keys to his own destiny. He is the man who creates his own path, who shapes his own future, and who moves through life with purpose, clarity, and unshakable confidence. This is the final lesson of Stoicism, the power of self-mastery, the ability to transcend your desires, your emotions, and your ego, and to make decisions based on wisdom, clarity, and purpose. It is this mastery that makes you truly unstoppable. And it is this mastery that will lead you to the greatest freedom a man can know, the freedom to be exactly who you were meant to be, without fear, without shame, and without regret. The man who commands his silence, who masters his desires, who transcends the forces that would normally control him, this man commands the world around him. He is untouchable, unstoppable, and free. And in this freedom, he becomes the greatest version of himself. The man who masters himself has already conquered the world. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey of self-mastery and emotional resilience. You've just taken a step toward understanding the true power that lies within you, one that isn't fueled by fleeting desires or external validation, but by deep, unshakable self-awareness and control. If what you've learned resonates with you, if you feel that stir within to take control of your own emotions, to rise above your desires, and to step into the fullness of your masculine power, then I invite you to subscribe to this channel. There is so much more to discover. Practical wisdom, timeless teachings, and powerful insights that will help you live your life with intention and clarity. By subscribing, you're committing to your own growth, your own mastery. So don't wait, click that subscribe button, join the community, and let's continue this journey together. Because true strength is not just about what you achieve, it's about who you become. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, stay strong, stay grounded, and always choose to master yourself.